That's great. All right. So you guys read this article on Friday, correct? And Mr. Miller told you who they really are? Yeah. Okay. So I just wanted to go over this just a little bit more. So what were you guys, when you were reading this on Friday, since I wasn't here, what were you guys' thoughts as you went through this? Yeah.
Keep that dude away from my mouth.
Keep that dude away from my mouth. Okay? Why? Because he's going to drill holes in your mouth and make your gums bleed and all this gnarly stuff to you. What are the thoughts? Yeah. They must be indigenous. What made you say that? It seems so different. I love that you said it that way. It seems so different. Then how did it make you feel when Mr. Miller told you who they really were? Why did it make you feel uncomfortable?
The fact that we're like perceived as that.
Okay, the fact that we're perceived as that. Any other thoughts on this? How did it make you feel after reading this and we make all these assumptions about these people and then you find out that it's us? How did that make you feel? Did it make you feel uncomfortable? Yeah. What are some of the reasons it made us uncomfortable? Or what are some lessons we can learn?
It's like for us, we don't like look at our culture as like the mouth bandage that drills holes in people's teeth. Kind of like it's like you earn it because you don't brush your teeth, you're gonna get it.
Yeah. Well, and we take for granted, right? We grew up in a society where you just go to the dentist because that's what they tell you to do. But if you look at it objectively, most people who go to the dentist, like, I always bleed when I go to the dentist. Like, it makes my gums bleed and you're drilling in your mouth, and like, little kids are scared of it, but we don't question it because it's so ingrained within our society. Yeah, Mary.
Wait.
I'm sorry.
It's okay, that's okay, anyway, like, how that's what we look like to other people, but when we just like focus on like our normal life, and then we see like what they see, it's really we have a different perspective.
Yeah. Yep, we use our ethnocentrism. It kind of clouds our judgment. We look at it through our own lens. And we can't look at other cultures through our lens, right? Were there any other thoughts that you guys had about this? Anything we want to pull out? What was the main belief of the Nakarim? Did anybody find what their main belief was? Yeah. That the human body's ugly. Do you think that's accurate? Is that an accurate assumption to make about American culture? Yeah? Why? Why do people feel that that could be accurate?
Because in like the United States, there's like so many people that like get procedures done so that they can look different.
Yeah.
Like they'll believe their body's good enough.
Yep. Think of all the money that Americans spend on making themselves look better. Whether that be plastic surgery, cosmetics, makeup, things of that nature, haircuts. You know, even the fact that you get a haircut is a way of looking and thinking that the human body is ugly, right? We get a haircut to look better. Cool. All right, so let's go ahead and transition. Did everybody pick up a word of the day? One of these? Anybody not get one? All right. So I know someone said they thought we were done with word of the days. I'm sorry. It'll be here all year. So go ahead and get those out.
Is that you, Mr. Waller?
All right, so for this one, we are going back to how we began, so it will be just a simple sentence is what we'll be writing, so make sure we have punctuation at the end, capital letter at the beginning. So our word today is censor. Can anybody tell me what the word censor means? Not censor with an S, censor with a C. Yeah, Carson.
It's like kind of like the Great Firewall.
Okay.
How you like block certain stuff. And, like,
Exactly.
stuff you want people to see.
That's awesome. So it's the act of taking information and pulling out the bits that you don't want them to know. So I always think of censoring as, when I was growing up, we bought CDs. And on the case of the CD, there was, on certain types of music, there was the parental advisory sticker down the bottom. You guys know what I'm talking about? So you would get, sometimes you would find ones that said clean. They would have that and it would say clean. And so someone had gone through and censored all of the bad stuff out of that music. So you get like an Eminem song, they go in and censor all the stuff out, and then you're left with not very much. There's just like a couple words and a bunch of empty space because they had to censor all the bad things out. That's how I always think of censor. It's someone going in and saying, this is not appropriate, right? There's always someone in power who is doing the censoring. So the synonyms we have up there are redact and edit. Can anyone think of another synonym for censor? Yes? Hide. Okay, hide. Good, you're hiding the information, you're just putting it out. Maybe one more. I know we got 3 already. But does anyone have another? Yeah, Genesis. Subtract, that's a good one. Alright, so then our antonym is add. We think of another antonym. Create. Okay. Maybe you're creating. It's not really, I think of, the last class came up with input. So to input something is to add. Yeah. Insert. Yep, that was the other one before there I came up with. Insert and, what did I just say? Insert. Input. There you go, insert and input. Alright, so our sentence context for today comes from an article, or a study rather, that Mr. Miller shared with me, that's showing that lung cancer rates are going down. Right? So our government and our legislators for the past like 20, 25 years, they've made a concerted effort to lower smoking rates. And what they did was they censored some of the areas and ways that you could buy tobacco. So when I was growing up, and even just, I don't know, it may have been like 15 years ago, restaurants used to have a smoking section and a non-smoking section. You could go to Pizza Hut, and if you were a smoker, you could eat your pizza and smoke inside. You just had to do it in a specific section. Well, they censored that out. They got rid of it because they were worried about lung cancer rates. They also recently raised the smoking age or the purchasing age from 18 to 21. That's a way of censoring out that group of people from being able to utilize tobacco in the hopes that they can reduce both smoking and lung cancer. So our sentence context for today is going to be something along the lines of censoring out. The government censoring tobacco use, society censoring tobacco use, or if you have something else that sparks like some creativity and you feel free to run with that and create your own sentence context for today. So go ahead and take a few minutes, write down your sentence, share it with the person in front of you, behind you, to the side of you. Use your best discretion.
Carson, you have a question?
Yeah, what's the part of speech?
Oh, I did not cover that in 4th hour either. Does anyone know what the part of speech is? Yeah. It's a verb, yes, it's an action. You do it. You censor. Alright, does anybody have a sentence they're just dying to share? One that they think is like, Ben, you got like a really good one? You popped up when I said that. You were like ready to go. No? No? Anybody got a sentence they want to share? Otherwise we'll just make Ben share it.
Yeah.
Yeah?
The government has censored everything tobacco use related to people under 21.
That's good. Good sentence. You got a capital letter at the beginning? Punctuation at the end? What kind of punctuation?
Period.
There you go. Awesome. Alright, so go ahead and put that away and let's get out our Chromebooks. So once you get your Chromebooks up, go ahead and go to Mr. Miller's website. Do you know about the website? Go ahead and get your Chromebook. So So once you get to the website, go to Global Cultures, and it's under the North American tab. Click on Global Cultures, click on North America, and then we're looking for this third one down, the one that says Cultural Universals. Go ahead and open up that Google Doc, and then we'll go ahead and talk about it here in a second. How is life with the, once you close it, it kicks you out? Still, yeah, that's what 4th hour says. Like that is so, what happens if somebody just like is messing with you and just like closes it? You know, like if I wanted to be mean, I would just like knock that down. You're lucky I don't want to be mean. Alright, so if you just Google search Mr. Miller's online classroom. Yep, that one right there. So this is where I like most of them. So if you go to Global Cultures, and then go to the North American tab. That'll be that third one. Culture Alright, does everybody have this up? Is this what your screen's showing? Yep. Okay, so our lesson today is going to be, we're going to be talking about Amerindian or indigenous populations. We're going to specifically be looking at a group called the Haida people that live in the Pacific Northwest. But before we do that, I want to kind of talk about this concept of a cultural universal. As you can see there, a cultural universal is an element or pattern, trait, or institution that is common and can be seen across all human cultures. So what this does is it allows us to compare maybe a culture that's from Southeast Asia with a culture that lives in Africa, in sub-Saharan Africa. We can compare cultures from across different time periods. We can look at how we live today and compare it to groups that lived 5, 10, 15,000 years ago. And this helps us remember one of the key themes of global culture is that we are more similar than dissimilar. And these cultural universals allow us to showcase that. We can see similarities among human populations. So this is just a list of 10 of those. This is what we'll be looking at in depth with the Haida people. But what I want you guys to do now is to think about the culture that we live in, whether that be United States culture, the culture of Illinois, or just the culture of Eureka High School in general. But I want you to come up, look at 3 to 5 of these keys and think about our own culture. So use the example of language. What type of language do we speak here? English. Is our language, is it an oral language, or is it a written language, or is it both? It's both, right? So we have writing and we have speaking. We can utilize our language in 2 ways. So I want you to go through and do a couple more of these for our culture. Think about how our culture showcases these universals. Let's take 2 or 3 minutes, and you can kind of work on them as a group. The people next to you kind of talk about them and digest them just a bit. Yeah, no, that sounds good. All right, so what were some of these that we've pulled out for our own culture? Genesis. FCTS, food, clothing, transportation, and shelter. Did you look at all 4 of those components, or just one in specific? All of them. So what were some of the things you came up with for our culture? What is our food? What kind of food do we have?
Like, I know we like meat and stuff like that. Vegetables.
Yep. Do most people grow their own food, or do we go buy our food? Most of us buy our food. Yeah. What about clothing?
Like, we wear shorts, pants, and stuff like that.
Mhm. Yep.
Other cultures as well.
And then same question with the food. Do we make our own clothing or do we buy our own clothing? Buy our own clothing, right? All right, what are some others that people picked up on or keyed in on to think about our culture? Yeah, Carson.
Like education, because in the United States here, you're like expected to go to school.
Mhm.
In other countries, that's a privilege.
Yep, and then our education is very formal, right? You start in kindergarten and you go till you're a senior, right? We put very formal restrictions upon education. Good. What about one more? What was another one of these cultural universals that we can apply to our own lives? Anybody? Or are we going? Yeah.
Like the values, beliefs, and rituals.
Okay, so what are some of our values, beliefs, or rituals?
We have a freedom of like what kind of religion that we want to
Mm-hmm.
practice.
Yeah.
In other countries, they don't always have that.
Yeah, awesome. I would even say that the concept of freedom is one of our values, right? It's something that we Americans hold very dear, is the fact that I can choose, I have free will. Very good. All right, so now we're going to kind of switch gears. We're going to go, do you guys remember, I used this website Nearpod last semester to give a lesson on like North Korea. We're going to be using that again. So if you guys go back to Mr. Miller's website, but this time just click on the Global Cultures tab. Down there is a link for Nearpod, and we're just going to use the same class code that 4th hour used. So that it's QHLFO. You're going to highlight that, and once you go to the Nearpod website, there's going to be a place at the top for you to insert that code. You're going to hit enter, and then it's going to ask you to come up with a name. Just go ahead and put your first name in there, and then it should take you to the lesson. Sorry, we may have to use a new code. I accidentally. Is anyone having any issues getting in? You're in?
Yes.
Is this what shows up on your screen once you're in?
Yeah.
Yeah.
Who said no?
Cheyenne.
Did you get it?
City.
Oh. Okay, well that's the second slide. I don't know why it's showing you the second slide. Just pretend. Oh, there it went. Alright, is anyone else still not in?
Oh, what's going on? It's gonna cut them off because it's only got 40 students, so you.
Oh, because I got to kick the other. Alright, I'm sorry guys. Let me restart.
For you. Just a second.
So just click it.
They got ways of trying to get us
It's going to make
pay money. They want money for some reason.
Not gonna give them money.
No.
Alright, so now there's a new code. I will link it down in.
No.
Alright, there's now a new code on Mr. Miller's website that should get you into the new class. Alright. Has anyone used the new code yet?
Yes.
Word? Already working? Alright.
I know it's invalid.
Did you try the new one, FLWKM?
Make sure you don't have a space in front of it, copy and pasting it.
Alright, who has not gotten in? Just Genesis? Yeah. Alright, are we good?
No.
Who's,
I'm lost. I'm done.
Spell your name with an A. Spell the name. or you can just see his slides and you can just see his slides.
Mr. Miller.
Or like it says, Mr. Miller's the other do you practice what? Do you practice when you can? No, I'm not aware. You have to ask Coach Dunn. Yeah, man.
I thought this used to happen like around Thanksgiving. No, because it hasn't happened yet. They're like in the playoffs or something. And Green Bay was playing something else.
Yeah.
That's right? Am I right?
Who is everybody got in? Who's still not in?
I don't understand.
Your Chromebook died.
Yeah.
That's unfortunate. Should we have a funeral?
Okay.
Alright, so let's go ahead and get started. Everybody's in except for Carson, whose Chromebook's dead.
Paper, pencil, Carson.
R.I.P. Alright, so as I said, today we're going to be looking at Amerindians or indigenous populations as a whole. But to do that, we're going to be using a specific group called the Haida people as kind of a case study. So the Haida people, they do a good job, or have done a good job within their culture of kind of showcasing a lot of things that we see across most Amerindian populations. So that's why we're going to be able to make just a few generalizations here. So first, our essential question, I need to change that. So our essential question is, what was life like for an Amerindian in pre-Columbian? So before Columbus got here. Does anyone know what year did Columbus come to the Americas? 1492. So before 1492, the life of Amerindians or indigenous peoples was drastically different. Right? Columbus brought in a lot of technology, a lot of plants, a lot of animals, and a lot of diseases that drastically reshaped and altered the culture that had been there for thousands of years. So that's why we're only going to be limiting to pre-Columbian, before Columbus got there. And as you'll see from that map, there's a wide range, a big number of diversity, or diverse groups or nations or tribes among Amerindian populations. And so that makes it kind of hard to study because there's just so much content. And so that's why we're taking one specific group and using them as a case study to help showcase some of the things that we see reproduced in many different tribes. So again, here's just a list of our 10 cultural universals that we'll be looking at as a way to understand or help us understand what life was like for an Amerindian. So Mr. Miller, if you want to. So the first thing that we're going to look at is geography. Now geography, this is the blueprint for culture. How a culture develops is heavily, heavily dependent upon their geography. Now why do we think that is? How does geography influence how we live our lives? Carson.
It can like kind of set limitations or add, because like people that live in the hills won't necessarily be like us who can farm, and there's really good farm ground.
Exactly. Awesome. Did you have something else to add to that?
I was just gonna put like people that went out and got farms and stuff.
Yep. So geography, it impacts almost every single one of these cultural universals, which is why I put it first. It impacts our food. Where you live determines what kind of animals live in your area, what kind of plants live in your area. It determines what type of profession you want to become, right? If you live on the sea, you're more likely to be a fisherman or a fisherwoman. Where if you live in the Great Plains, would you want to be a fisherman? Would that be a good career choice to become a fisherman in the Great Plains? No, because geography has determined what is a valuable or viable career for you. It influences our religion, the types of environments that we grow up in determine how we view the world, how we think about the world. They determine our family structure. So geography is really the blueprint for all cultures. It determines a lot of different things. So with the Haida people in specific, they live in the Pacific Northwest. They live on an island chain that is in between Canada and Alaska. Part of their lands are Alaska, part of their lands are Canada. And what this means is that they live in very rocky environments. They live on a rocky island that doesn't necessarily allow them to grow crops. It's not a very good place for agriculture due to the nature of the soil. Again, geography. But the good thing about this is that the land, the geography, provides them with a lot of food. Right? So the Haida are what's known as a hunter-gatherer society. they go out and they live off the land. They're able to hunt meat, they're able to fish for fish, they're able to gather fruits, nuts, plants, all kinds of different things that they can eat, and it all comes from the land. Again, geography. So to tie into this, FCTS, food, clothing, transportation, and shelter, we see that their food is determined by the geography. They eat a lot of seafood, they eat a lot of salmon, they eat a lot of like cod and halibut and shellfish, things of that nature. There's a lot of game meats, and then also a lot of fruits and nuts. And we see this across most Amerindian groups, right? Most Amerindian groups don't engage in large-scale agriculture. Now there's some exceptions, especially down in Latin America, but for the most part, most Amerindian groups relied off the land. They took what the land provided for them, or what the land gave them. As far as clothing, the Haida people in specific, they used the bark of cedar trees. They were able to take the bark off and create a kind of fiber that could be used to weave clothes, right? So they have seasons in the Pacific Northwest. They get both the summer and the winter. So you're going to need different types of clothing. You're going to need summer clothes and winter clothes. For your summer clothes, you might use these cedar bark fiber garments, or in the winter, you're going to need to rely on animal skins, things with fur that are going to help keep you warm, because they get a lot of snow up in the Pacific Northwest. Their transportation. So before Columbus arrived in the New World, there were no horses here. They didn't have horses for transportation. So the only way for Amerindians to move about the land was either to utilize waterways, so they would use boats, and in this instance, the Haida people were really good at building canoes, or they had to walk. So either utilization of waterways or walking were the main ways that Amerindians were able to transport themselves across the country. And then the shelter, that one of the key things that we see is that Amerindians use, again, the geography. They use the resources they are given. So with the Haida in specific, they make these big, long, rectangular houses out of cedar planks. If you guys know cedar trees, they grow very straight and they grow upright. So all you have to do is knock one down and you can make these really long, straight boards to help build these big houses. And these houses would sometimes hold between 30 and 50 people, and it was a very large family. So you had not just like mom, dad, and the siblings, it was grandma, grandpa, mom, dad, aunts, uncles, cousins, all living under one roof in these massive rectangular plank houses. Language and family. So the Haida people, they have developed their own language. They have lived in the region where they have been inhabitants of the region for like 6,000 years. And why this is important is because that amount of time allowed their language to become its own thing, right? So it obviously would have started out as a dialect of some other tribe, but over the course of 6,000 years, they were able to develop and build this very distinct language. And what is really interesting about their language is that it was only an oral language. And this is one of the key characteristics that we see across Amerindian populations, is that their languages were oral. They didn't write things down. Now what makes this, one of the problems with this is it's very hard to study these groups, right? Because there's no written record. We can't go in and read their histories or read about their famous people or their famous events, because all those histories were transmitted orally through stories, through poems, through songs. And we don't have those stories and poems and songs for us now, so it's very hard to learn about these groups of people. That's why we rely on archaeologists rather than historians to help study these groups of people. Now with the family society, the Haida, they were split. This is not something you see across most Amerindian cultures. It's very specific to the Haida people themselves. But they split everyone into two groups. You were either born a raven or you were born an eagle. Now, when I first read about this, it kind of confused me, because you would think that within a society, if you split people at birth, it's going to look like this, right? Where you're going to have a people group at the top and a people group underneath. Think like South Africa, right? How they had split people based upon race into like a hierarchy. But here with the Haida individuals, these two groups lived simultaneously next to each other. The only thing that your group determined was where you lived, what kind of, what lands you could hunt, what rivers you could fish. But they were able to keep these two groups equal to each other because you couldn't marry within the group. So if you were born a raven, you couldn't marry another raven. You had to go marry an eagle. The same vice versa, eagles had to marry ravens. And it's this really interesting way of keeping society separated, but together, right? Because one group doesn't, the dynamic doesn't flip this way because of the marriages between the two. Now also the Haida people, they followed a matrilineal style of inheritance. So can somebody tell me, does anyone know what the word matrilineal means? Or patrilineal? So we live in a patrilineal society where inheritance it goes through the males. So that's why when a couple gets married, it's tradition here for the woman to take the last name of the male, because inheritance travels through the male line. Now in the Haida society, they had a matrilineal style. What do we think that means? Where it goes, what? You don't have to take last name. What were you saying? It goes through the women. So lineage travels through the woman's side of the family. So in a Haida society, if you were to get married, the male would take on the last name of the female. And also, most societies, like in a patrilineal society, when a female marries, she goes and lives with her husband's family. She would leave her home and go and live with the husband's family. The opposite is true for the Haida people. The male would leave his house and go live with his wife's family. And that's how the lineage was traced through the woman. Right? And then again, the households, they were made up of large family groups. When I was talking about the houses, sometimes 30 to 50 people would live in these houses, and this reinforces the idea that these societies are communal. Right? It's not about the individual, it's about society as a whole. You are a part of something greater than yourself, and the family dynamic leads to that. You all have to rely upon one another for survival. Very, very communal. So our education and technology, as we pointed out earlier, education in America is very formal, right? There's laws saying when you have to go to school and when you get out of school. But education across the Amerindian world was much less formal, and it was much more skills-based. So you guys come to school to learn facts, to learn concepts, to learn knowledge, where an Amerindian individual, an Amerindian child, they would be learning skills. They would be learning things Haida specific. They would be hunting, fishing, weaving, carving, how to survive, how to take what the land gives you and make and create a good living out of that. We also see something that is pretty universal across many cultures, is that boys and girls underwent a coming of age ritual, something that they would do once they reached a certain age. Can we think of any coming of age rituals in our society? Yeah. Bar mitzvahs and bat mitzvahs, right? So in the Jewish tradition, when a young individual reaches the age of 13, you undergo either a bar mitzvah or a bat mitzvah. It's a coming of age. Can we think of another one?
Cinco de Mayo?
Cinco?
No.
Quinceañera?
Yeah.
Quinceañera. So again, with Latin cultures, we turn 15. Can we think of one that is unique to American culture?
A sweet 16.
Okay, a sweet 16, what do you get when you turn 16? Driver's license, yes. So the act of getting a driver's license is this coming of age ritual. It's you embedding yourself within the culture after a certain age threshold. Now the technology of the Haida people, if we think about technology in the traditional sense, most Amerindian groups are not very technologically advanced, but what they do have is they have different types of technology. So they have technology to allow them to hunt well. They have technology to allow them to fish well. Some of the things that I pulled out were Haida specific. They're very, very good carvers. They're a group of people that create totem poles. You guys know what totem poles are? Right? So they're very good at carving. They carve out their canoes, they carve out wooden figurines, they carve out their totem poles. It's an artistic skill or technology that they have highly, highly developed. They also developed warships. So the Haida people were somewhat warlike in nature, and something I thought was pretty cool. They built these massive war canoes where like 50 or 75 people could fit in these canoes, and that's how they would take them off to war. I thought that was pretty cool. And then they also developed armor. That picture there is what's called rod and slate armor, and that's something that the warriors would wear in to help protect them from arrows. They say that if you were to wear like a deer jerkin underneath and put that on top, like that would stop an arrow from coming at you. So I thought that's pretty cool. You don't see that across most Amerindian populations, the development of armor, especially since most of them don't have the metal technology that Europeans do. But I thought it was interesting that the Haida were able to develop that. Alright, Mr. Miller, if you could. Need to find a way to change that.
Yeah, we'll get it.
Alright, so economics and politics. So within American Indian populations, most of the economy is what's called like a trade and barter society. So you trade goods straight up to one another. So say you have 10 salmon, you could trade those 10 salmon for a canoe, right? There's no money being exchanged. Money doesn't really have a concept. It's all about goods, transmission of goods from one to another. Now a main Haida specific, their economy was relied heavily on salmon. So we can kind of think they would use salmon the way we use money. So salmon was one of the most plentiful fish that they were able to fish for in the location they're from. And then they would use the surpluses, so other than they would set aside salmon to eat, and then there would be surplus, and they would use that surplus as money. They would use it as a means of funding their livelihood. And they also took a very communal approach, right? It was not an individualistic country, it was communal. So they would share. If someone were to come in and they were to kill a deer, they wouldn't keep that meat all to themselves. They would share it among the community, because when we all eat, we're all stronger, right? You don't want to live in a society in this time where you have a group, you want everybody within your family to be strong. You don't want some people hungry and some people full. You want everybody full, because that's going to better ensure your survival. Now the politics of this time, most American Indian groups, we see them, they have chieftains. Now there is usually a hierarchy to the chieftains, kind of like the way we have in American culture, where we have a president at the top, and then maybe there's governors underneath the president, and then there's mayors underneath the governor. We see a similar hierarchy within Native American populations, where you have a central chief, and then chieftains who answer to them, and so on and so forth. With the Haida in specific, we know that their chieftains or their clans, they were split up based upon family. They were split up based upon heritage, so you lived with a kin group, people that were close kin to you, that then were governed by a chieftain. And one of the big means of gaining and keeping political power within the Haida society is this idea of a potlatch. Now a potlatch is like a giant party or a feast that a chieftain would throw, but at this party, the chieftain would give gifts to the guests. So today, when you guys go to like a birthday party, you usually take a gift. At a potlatch, it's the opposite. You would go to the event in order to receive a gift. And what this does is it allows the chieftain a chance to show off how wealthy and powerful they are. Right? If you can throw a party for several hundred people and you can give each one of them a really bomb gift, that shows how powerful and wealthy you are. You have such extravagance that you can afford to give everyone a gift. It's a way of showcasing power, but it's also a way of trying to preserve one's legacy. Right? When you're gone, you want people to remember what you did for them. Hey, this guy gave me this really, really cool gift. He was really strong and powerful. Kind of the way, do you guys know like Vanderbilt and Rockefeller and a lot of like the men at the turn of the century that funded, they were big philanthropists? It's the same concept, right? We remember John Rockefeller because he spent a bunch of money in New York City and got his name all over everything. So it's kind of that concept where you spend money to make a name for yourself to preserve power and prestige. So this last one is our VBR, or our values, beliefs, and rituals. The one thing I really want to point out here is in their belief system, they believed in this type of religion or an aspect of religion that we could call animism. Now animism is a religious belief that assigns inanimate objects a soul or a spirit. So in the Haida belief, they believed that the earth, the rocks, the trees, the animals, the water, the sky, all possessed a spirit or a soul. And they would pray to that. They would call upon these objects for guidance, for strength. They would pray to them. They would hold them in reverence. And that is one of the things that we see across many, many American Indian populations is this idea of animism, or assigning a spirit or some type of religious connotation to an object or an animal or an idea. Now their cultural expression, as we see across a lot of American Indian populations, music and dancing is a big component. of the Haida people, they also developed their own artistic style, right? So this picture down here, and again, this is Miss Birchie's. She has a lot of really cool, like, Native American artifacts. But you'll see this red and black kind of abstract artwork is called Haida artwork. It is a form of art that is distinct to this cultural group. And again, if we think 6,000 years, they've had lots of time to develop and make this better. So it's something that's unique to them, but it showcases, this is a way for them to highlight their beliefs. This picture tells a story. This is the story of the Haida creation. Their creation story is depicted through this artwork. And then we get out of here at 1:10.
Yes.
All right. So, don't think we really have time for the video.
Yep.
So, all right, so go ahead and let's put our notes away. Let's do our 3 questions.